Let's get creative. Today we are going to get creative with our resin canvas. So in your kit you're going to have a pair of gloves, which is very important for this instruction. You're going to find a large cup, a few smaller cups for pouring your mixed resin in, 2 cups of resin A, and 1 cup of hardener B. You're also going to have 3 liquid pigments, 2 powder pigments, your white paint, a straw, and your stirring sticks. Find your large paddle pop stick, and that's what you're going to use to start mixing your resin into the large cup. So today you are going to need some optional tools. You might need a pair of scissors to cut your straw into smaller pieces. I'll go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to be using 2 straws. And I'll set that aside. You'll also need some paper towel to keep your surface clean. And I'm going to show you how to use a butane torch. Now this is a blue flame. You need an adult to use this. As an alternative for the flame, we're going to be using straws for that air pressure. All right, let's get started. I want you to strap up using your gloves. So resin is a 2-part material and it is toxic. So you always want to keep your skin clean and covered. So I took off all my rings to make my gloves a little bit easier to fit. I'm also wearing an apron and my surface is protected. So to mix up that resin, you're going to need 2 parts A to 1 part B. That means whatever amount you mix, you always want to use double the amount of A than you do B. You do not need to use all of this resin in one go. You can definitely use a quarter of it, half of it, or use all of it and do your entire project, your resin and your inking today, all in one turn. But if you'd like to have a few tries at it, I recommend just using a quarter of the material or even half. So what I'm going to do is use all of cup A, very carefully going to unscrew the top. I'm going to pour all of the contents of A into the large cup. Now the resin we're using is an odorless resin. So you don't need big machines sucking the air out. You don't need to be wearing a mask. However, I do recommend having a good airflow and not being inside a small room. So possibly doing this outside and also to protect your area from accidental dripping or splashing of resin. So notice how I'm taking that large paddle pop stick and I'm wiping all of that goodness out. So the actual resin is really thick and sticky, like a syrup consistency. Now I'm going to take B. I'm going to very carefully unscrew it. I'm going to pour half of the contents of B into this cup. Do it slowly so you can have good indication of where half is. And that looks good. So I'm going to take my paper towel and I'm going to rest B on top of that paper towel because it does have a little bit of a drip. Now I'm going to take my lid and screw that on nice and tightly and use that for next time. When you're mixing or pouring in a half quantity, the most important thing to remember is that you want the amount of hardener or B to be half as much or less as A. Do not have half or more of B. The more hardener you have, the less likely your resin is going to set. So now you have A and B in your cup, and mine is about half full. Now I'm going to put a timer on my phone for 3 minutes. Hey Siri, Can you put a timer on for 3 minutes, please?
Okay, your timer is set for 3 minutes.
She's handy. So taking your large paddle pop stick, you have 3 minutes to stir. Be very careful when you're stirring. You don't want to mix it too fast and have a little spillage because we don't want to waste any of this good stuff. So the hardener that you added to the resin is a lot thinner. So you'll notice that the two materials mixing together will start to create lots of little bubbles, and it may even start to have a milky tone to the resin once it's mixed. So here I'm really scraping the bottom, getting all of that syrupy resin that we added first mixed into that hardener. Scraping the sides too, and you can have fun with different mixing, folding and whipping and scraping. Getting a real good arm workout for this 3 minutes. And there's your 3 minutes. So I'm going to be wiping off my stick, getting all of that resin off of my stick and into my cup. Now have a look at all those little bubbles. There. So we'll get those out with a little bit of using that heat gun, and that little bit of straw blowing will help as well. So now if you'd like to cover your surface should already be covered. I'm just going to get another piece of baking paper and lay that down. So put down your little stands, and you get to now rest your little canvas on there. So here's your stands, and you're going to get your stretched canvas. I'm going to show you how we're going to pour resin on this stretched canvas using our inks and our pigments. So once you have your resin mixed up, you're going to pour your resin into your smaller cups. Now you don't have to use all of the cups, and you don't have to use equal parts of resin. So I'm going to be using three smaller cups and this larger cup. There's no reason why I need to pour that into here, and I'll reserve these smaller cups for my alcohol ink projects. So let's start adding our pigment. So today we're going to use some red. Now when you're adding any type of coloring into resin, the most important ratio you need to remember is that you want to keep the quantity of resin at 90% or more and the amount of additive at 10% or less. Okay, so I'm going to start with, let's start with 4, whoop, sorry guys, go ahead and open up your little ink. Now be very careful cutting that tip. If you have a screw or a nail, you can push that in as opposed to cutting it too deep. So I cut the tip, and now I just took a little paper clip and I pushed it in and pulled it out. Now using your thumb, hold that top down and lift it up. We do have some other alcohol inks in the kit that may not need that top to be removed. So here I am again with that amount of resin. I'm just going to start with 3 drops. 3 drops. Put that ink down, and now I'm going to take one of my paddle pop sticks and stir it. So this ink is transparent, which means you can see through it. You can have a play with adding a few more drops if you want that pigment to be a little more intense. So here my total drops is now 6. I'm going to mix that into a nice vibrant red. And I'll put that down. Now another really cool aspect about resin is that you can pretty much add any material into it because essentially it's a glue. So I'm talking like rocks and sand and glitter and seashells. Again, that paper clip opened up my blue ink very nicely, so very carefully I pulled it out, put it on my paper towel. You always want to keep your gloves clean, so keep that paper towel in the air and constantly wipe. So again, you can add different materials to resin. I'll start with 6 drops. I'll get a new stick and mix that through. So notice how it has that marbled effect. That's pretty interesting. So you could keep your coloring like that, or you can mix it all the way through. So it's a nice tint to that color. It's a beautiful blue. Now if you want it to be more intense, add a few more drops to that and rest the cup down. Now for my next cup, I'm going to be adding a little bit of white acrylic paint. Now this is a water-based product, so when you're adding it to resin, you want to be very careful with the quantity. If you add something that has a water-based content and you put too much of it and overpower that 90% ratio that we were talking about, your resin could or may not set properly. So be very careful with when you're adding any acrylic paint to it. You can add any other colors that you have at home. You could even mix and match. So you might want to make a pink using a little bit of white with a red. So what I'm going to do with this paint, I just pulled that little sticker off, and now all I'm going to do is put a tiny bit of white on top of my stick. So I'm going to show you guys, try to zoom in. Ooh, how's that? Can you guys see? It was just a little dab. And you'll notice that when you mix it into that resin, it'll be more of an opaque color, which means you can't see through it as much as the other inks. So it's creating a nice milky white with that quantity of resin that I have, which means that I would like it to be a little more opaque. So I'm going to squeeze a little bit more, about 1/4 teaspoon, and I'm going to mix it into that resin. Now I'm not going to mix it in completely. I'm going to have it a little bit of a marbled look. And then I'm going to wipe my paddle puff stick, move that. And the last color I'm going to add is a metallic. So today I'm going to go with my purple metallic. Very carefully, I'm just going to squeeze the top of the bag open. Now it looks like there's not a lot of color in this little baggie, but there is a good amount for the amount of resin that we're using. So very carefully, just take that baggie and you're going to tip the quantity into the little resin cup and shake it out. I'm actually going to put that cup down, close that bag very carefully away from the rest of the colors, and to be honest, I have a little bit more in that baggie to use for another project. So get your paddle pop stick, you can mix in that powder. Now this is a metallic powder, so it's got this beautiful shimmer to it. Now I'm just going to scrape that side of the cup with the stick. There, beautiful. Look at that luscious color. There's so many layers that you can achieve with a metallic color. Just beautiful. how pretty. So I'm gonna put those colors down, and again, we have purple, white, blue, and the red. There we go. I had a little bit of dust on that canvas. The reason why you want those little stands is so when you pour the resin on top of your canvas and you start moving, that resin's gonna start dripping off onto that base, and you don't want your canvas sitting in a puddle. So that's why we put the little plastic stands underneath, so it raises it and it's a little bit more protected. So I'm gonna get those situated, and now we're gonna have fun pouring. So I'm gonna start with my red. Add a beautiful stream of color there. Now that's called free pouring. You can also use your stick and do some fun specific designs. But more importantly, resin art is a free-flowing material. So it has a mind of its own. Please don't try to pour something too specific, because that design is going to change and it's going to evolve and it's going to move. So I'm just pouring the colors relatively central. I'm pouring some colors right on top of other colors, so you can layer. Now I'm just gonna take my canvas and lift it up and start tilting. I'm watching those beautiful colors blend together and create unique marks. So the colors mix together, making new colors. So my palette of red and blue naturally looks good with a purple because that mixes well together. So here I'm just carefully tilting my canvas, keeping the resin on the canvas. I don't want to lose too much of it. And that purple is so pretty. I could do this all day long, just see these different colors blending and forming with each other. It's so beautiful. So resin is a self-leveling material, which means it will eventually find its way to a flat surface. But now, I'm actually going to add a little bit more paint to this because I want that white to be nice and vibrant. A little bit more until I get a nice consistency of color. So try to mix on the side of your canvas. Don't try to mix your color right on top because you might have a little spillage. It might be a happy accident, but just in case. Okay, so here that white is now a little bit opaque. And I'm going to show you what happens when you add this white across it like waves. And now I'm going to take my straw and I'm going to blow that. So have fun making new marks with a straw. One thing is you don't want to suck. You're definitely blowing and you don't want to be too close to it. And always use the same end for the blowing. so pretty. Now we still have a lot of resin left. So have fun taking your stick. You can do some scooping of your color. Like I said, the drops are so effective. They're beautiful. Now you also have a skewer in your kit. A skewer is your pointy wood stick, and it makes beautiful designs when you drag the color through. You can also try it on the side and do some swirly designs.
You can always tilt it back and kind of redo your design.
I'm going to add a little bit of my blue into my purple to create a darker shade and mix it up. So if you're wondering if you could add a couple drops of an ink with a little bit of your powder into a cup, the answer is absolutely. I just showed you how you can pour one of your mixed resin colors into the next, and now you have a whole nother color. So I'm going to keep that dark blue on the outside, almost creating something like a frame. Beautiful. If you don't like the raw canvas showing, you can always take your pedal pop stick and direct the resin into those areas like I'm doing here. Beautiful. So we're just going to start tilting that color back into the center. It's starting to look like a seahorse a little bit, and that's what I see. Now I'm going to completely change the artwork. Here we go. I'm gonna let those colors go right off the edge. Now I move my little stands over so when the resin starts pouring off, it's not going to be contaminating those stands. And if it does, whoop, I got a few drops here, I'm telling you it won't, and now it did. That's fine, guys. If that happens, you can just take your paddle or your paper towel and wipe them off, or you can always flip your sticks. See what I mean? The stand is a little bit covered in resin, so I'll just flip that over. My other cup or my other stand had a little bit there as well, so I'll just flip it over and I rest that canvas back on there. Cool. So what do you guys think? Are you liking your design? Do you like that freedom or that unique free flow of color? It's fun just to let go and experiment. Sometimes life just has so many demands and so many rules and so many things that you have to follow by, and being able just to pour resin and be able to have fun experimenting. We call that process art, and it's so good for the soul just to see what happens. Now we're going to use that butane torch. Remember, you want clean hands, and as you are using the flame, remember this step is optional, but if you do happen to have a butane torch or some type of flame, it's going to pop all these little air bubbles. So when I press down on my flame, that's a blue flame, and I'm just going to very carefully graze that flame across the canvas, popping any little air bubbles. Notice I'm not staying in one spot. It's very important you don't stay in one spot because we're not trying to burn this resin, and that will happen. So I'm just going to go over one more time the opposite way. And notice how my white is starting to get a really cool texture. I'm going to wait for that flame to stop coming out and see how it's starting to get that really interesting texture on it. I love that. Just gonna tilt a little bit more. And now is a cool time to add any embellishments to it, meaning if you had any sand or rocks or shells that you wanted to get, that might be really neat. If you have any other color, just drape it over. And there you have it, an abstract resin canvas. Wasn't it cool? So the working time that you have to play around with pouring resin and adding any extra ingredients like sand or glitter or shells on top of it, you have 45 minutes to work with this resin. So have fun tilting and drawing in and dragging things or sprinkling different things in, but you only have 45 minutes to work on it. Once that 45 minutes is up, your resin is going to start setting and drying. Now, if you have some unused resin in a cup, it may start to set inside that plastic. The best thing to do if you notice that your resin is starting to smoke is to be very careful not to touch it. Make sure you have protective, thick gloves or even an oven mitt to dispose of that resin in the cups immediately. Then you have 3 days to wait for your resin to completely cure. So it's going to take 72 hours for it to really dry and to be touchable. So what I want you to do is put your resin or you put your artwork in a safe, clean space to dry, and make sure it's a level surface too, because you don't want it to accidentally be tilted in one area and then all that resin slide off of your artwork. So be careful of where you're going to leave it. Make sure it's not outside or in a really dusty or dirty place, because resin is sticky. It's like a glue, and it will attract any of those dust particles flying around. So put it in a safe place for 3 days, and then after the 3 days, you are ready to hang your artwork. So make sure that you really enjoy this process. It is abstract. It's not really going to be something that looks like a house or a dog. It is abstract, and it's more about just discovering new ways to pour and to draw and to get some new interesting marks. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Thanks for getting creative with resin with the seed, and we'd love to see your results. So feel free to tag us on social media using @theseedcw, or you can share it with us on our Facebook or Instagram page. Thanks, guys. See you next time.